This is the Lights On Show. My name is Jacob Morset. I'm an honor student at Boise State University, and this is my podcast centered around turning the lights on. I go and talk to day-to-day professionals to learn how they've mastered their craft. We go in-depth on the inner workings of their perspective, their process, and their strategies, all in the hopes of inspiring others. All right, so today I'm with Mike Hagberg, who is my uncle. We have different last names because I was married into this family, because I have a split family, but that's okay. And I'll just have Mike introduce himself now.
Yeah, I'm Mike Hagberg, and I've known Jake since, how old were you, Jake, when we first met?
When my stepdad, when Nathan married my mom, I think it was like 5, or maybe I was just about to turn 6, and I think I may have met you right after they got married, or maybe before.
I think we probably met at the temple, I'm guessing, right? Were you there?
I was there.
Yeah,
I was very unhappy.
I'm sure we met.
Yes. So definitely it's been kind of like family ever since. I mean, obviously I was super young, so it's not like I was 18, like, oh, you're my uncle now? Oh, cool. Yeah. So I've known him for a long time. How about you tell us what you do and kind of explain your job process and what you do every day?
Cool. So I am a director of software engineering for inside sales. So as a director of software engineering, I am responsible for teams building software, and my day in the life of my job is pretty much get to work, and we always have a stand-up first thing in the morning. So a stand-up meeting is ideally designed so that everybody is standing up to keep the meeting short, and it's just about what you did yesterday, what you're going to do today, and if there's any blockers. So
blockers and like problems that will stop you from doing what you got to do.
Yep. Is there anything that's going to keep you from getting what you want to get done today done?
Mm-hmm.
So we go through the stand-up process. There's usually some communication that I'll give back to the team regarding, customer feedback or company feedback, or we have a professional services team we work with closely, and they often have feedback for us as well. So my job is to make sure that everybody stays in the loop about what we need to get done and why we're focused on getting this particular thing done. Also helping to mitigate any type of interruptions to their workflow. So one of the things that's really difficult for engineers is if they are working on something and they get interrupted.
The flow can be broken.
Yeah. So engineering is one of these processes where it takes a lot of deep thought. It takes a while to get into what you're doing. And so if you're constantly going back and forth between different tasks, that it takes you longer to complete a task. So, interruptions can include bugs that come in. They could include, the company having a meeting out of the blue, or somebody putting in a special request, hey, this has to be done right away. Mm-hmm. So as a director of software engineering, I work to stop all that stuff from getting to the engineers. So I can take all the priorities and formulate them into what is our next priority for the next 2 weeks. So I try to keep my engineers free from any distractions and keep them focused on what they're working on for 2 weeks straight. And then their goal is to finish everything they have on their plate in that 2 weeks, mm-hmm. so that they can start a new 2 weeks. And then I can bring in all these things that are high priority or urgent issues. And there's always times when we have to bring an urgent issue in or whatever, but that's the goal.
But it's usually on like a nice 2-week cycle.
We try to keep it on an even 2-week cycle. So that's how my day starts, is making sure everybody's pointed in the right direction. And then from there, it's lots and lots of customer meetings, lots of product meetings. We have our standard Agile process. So in software engineering, there's a waterfall process and there's an Agile process. Waterfall means everything's very well defined. Banks, government, big consulting companies, they'll use a waterfall process. And an Agile process is all about keeping things agile so you can quickly change and point different directions. So in an Agile process, there's typically your stand-up meetings, you have a planning meeting, you have a retro meeting. A retro meeting is where you look back in the last 2 weeks and say, what did you do well? What do you want to change? Mm-hmm. Make plans. And then you have a grooming meeting. So a grooming meeting is where you go through and take all the stories that are currently in your backlog, and you estimate how long they're going to take to build, and you get better requirements, and you define them, and you work with your QA engineers to, anyways.
Yeah.
So all these meetings are part of my day, depending on
Of
what
being
day,
a director.
yeah, depending on what day it is, and then coordinating with all the other engineers and different organizations about, hey, what do we need to do to get the work that we have in front of us done in the next 2 weeks.
All right.
So yeah, kind of boring. If you look at it as it's a lot of orchestrations, a lot of meetings, and we're trying to get everybody on the same page and in the same direction. And then I also have one-on-ones. So every single one of my direct reports is somebody I'm going to need to meet with, and every week I'll meet with them and find out how they're doing. And so that's actually one of my favorite parts of being a director, is actually helping people be better at their jobs, helping them grow their careers. And it's something I feel like I do a really good job at. I do it differently than anybody else I know. When I sit down and do a one-on-one, I'm very thorough, and I give them, a really good
overview kind of.
I really help them know that they can depend on me to deliver what they ask me for. And then I ask the same of them. And eventually what we find is, as they get used to seeing me do whatever they've asked me to do over and over and over again, pretty soon they're like, wow, Mike's going to do whatever I ask him to do. I really need to do what he's asking me to do. So anyways, but that's part of it. But the bigger part of it is just helping them be better individuals, better engineers, whatever in their life. I talk about family stuff with them sometimes, marriage, counseling, whatever.
There you go.
So it's all of it.
It's a big job.
Yep.
So obviously, you remember the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I try not to throw a whole bunch of secular. Is secular that with religion, and non-secular is non-religious, or is it the other way around?
Secular would be worldly.
Okay, so I try not to make it 100% non-secular, but it just so happens to be that so many of my Latter-day Saint, church member peers have such successful positions, and I'm able to actually talk with them. That just makes it really easy access for me. But anyway, so I do like to ask this question, though, is obviously you've been on a mission. We've talked about this before, but how do you think that may have changed you from a boy who's just going to high school to the man you are now, who has a family, a job that has many, many, many titles, and all those types of things? How has that kind of transitioned you, prepared you, or just, in other words, got you through it?
The biggest thing that a mission did for me, a mission is a lot like a mini lifetime. So in 2 years, you are going to experience things that most people don't get to experience until they're either much older or maybe even never. But it's like a lifetime compacted into 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you have failures, you have successes, you have heartbreak, you have super rejoiceful moments where you're just, overwhelmed with happiness and joy. You have friends that you make. You have people that you feel like you're brothers with, that then tell you they never want to see you again and stop coming over. You see miracles happen. I saw a ton of miracles on my mission that were unbelievable. They're just true miracles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like having that lifetime of experience compressed into 2 years helps you become a man, because
you already
you're dealing with these things. So for me, one of the big things was learning how to deal with conflict, learning how to deal with people. I remember there was one time where I was really unhappy with a way one of the missionaries I was a leader over was behaving, but I never talked to that missionary about it. Yet I was constantly complaining to my mission president about this missionary, to the point where eventually he said something to this missionary. And at that moment I realized, oh wait, he's going to mention my name. He's going to tell him that I'm not happy with the way he's doing things. And yet I never gave him a chance to actually know
change.
that I was unhappy with him. Like, I never gave him a chance to change. I never told him about it. And it was one of those moments like, wow, if I'm going to complain about somebody, I really should complain to them first before anybody else. So that was one of those like leadership experiences where I was like, wow.
And that's what you do every day, though.
That's what I do every day. Yeah. So I got really good at it early on in life. And so that really helped. But there's other experiences too. I remember, we were teaching a family, and they were Catholic, and I had been taught growing up that whenever the Book of Mormon mentioned the Great and Abominable Church, that meant the Catholic Church. And so we happened to be reading we were reading the whole Book of Mormon with this family. They wanted to read it from start to finish, and so we were in what is it? First Nephi chapter 10 or 11, whenever it starts talking about the Great and Abominable Church. And they said, so which church is the Great and Abominable Church?
And you said,
and I told them it was the Catholic Church, which is completely wrong. I learned later, because that's what I had been taught, and just that devastation that they never invited us back, of course. And we were super close to this family. I don't know if they ever got baptized, but,
utter despair.
It wasn't, I mean, the spirit wasn't there because it wasn't true. And, so I since learned, I had a great religion class that taught what the Great and Abominable Church really is. And it says in the scriptures, there's two churches they're both churches of the heart. One's the Church of God, and one's the Great and Abominable Church. So either your heart loves God, or it loves Satan.
So it's not really an actual religion. It's like a mindset kind of.
It's your heart.
Yeah, it's your heart.
Yeah, and I could go into depth about that, but we'll leave it at there.
That's I really like that response. That's the first time I've ever heard someone like describe a mission as the entire life experience in one compact like chapter of your life, which is just 2 years. I really like that because, I mean, like we all have to live life, but if you already kind of experience a lot of life really, really fast when you're really, really young, naive, ignorant, whatever it may be, in only 2 years, like, can I get a lot of explosions in your brain?
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. Never heard that before. That's a new one. I'm definitely gonna check up on that. Like I'll try to think about this when I'm going on my mission. But like, he's definitely right about this. So we'll see, and we can always talk about that.
A lot of people feel that way. So you'll even hear people talk about when you get to your mission being born. So they'll talk about that being as your birth, and your trainer they'll often call your dad, and then his trainer is your grandpa. And then when you have somebody that you train, that's your son, and then your dad would be his grandfather. So I actually had a chance where I was reunited with my trainer later on in my mission, and I was training, and we were in a threesome, and my trainee's name was Elder Crasperson, and so we joked that it was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Crasper.
That's awesome.
So and then you die when you go home. So when you go home, they call it your death.
Yeah.
So it really is like a mini lifetime. So
that's actually that's really awesome. And then kind of finishing out this main intro, but how did you get into CS? And explain the different jobs you had. Kind of briefly introducing yourself into this field, because obviously you grew up on not obviously, but you grew up on a farm in Gridley, California, which many of you guys probably don't know what we're talking about. I don't even know where it's at.
It's about 1 hour north of Sacramento, in between Yuba City and Chico, in the Sacramento Valley.
So there you go. So kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Still don't have any cell service whenever you go out there, and it's on a big farm. So what kind of made you shift from that, your Gridley farm boy style, to a dude who rides his bike every single day, Salt Lake City, and does computer science? Like, kind of describe that.
So growing up, really respected my grandfather and my father. They taught me hard work. They taught me work ethic. But I knew I didn't want to be on a roof when it was 120 degrees outside, working construction with my dad.
Yes.
Just because that was not something I thought of as a rewarding career for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat right now with fences. It's not fun.
And so my dad started us off young, like, 5 years old, even picking up nails at the job site. So he kind of burned me out a little bit, maybe a little early on the work side.
Yeah.
But I mean, I definitely learned hard work. So it was great. It was a great experience. But at an early age, we got a computer at our house. It was a Packard Bell 286.
So super old.
Super old. Yeah. Piece of crap computer. But I love to break that thing. I spent more time than anybody else in the house on that thing. I was always trying to figure out weird things I could do with it. I used to prank call people with the modem all the time. So the modem, back in the old days, you used to dial up to the cell service. So I used to actually dial into my friends' houses, and you could set it to auto repeat, and you could set it to set durations of how long it would wait to dial. Anyway, so I had fun prank calling people and doing all kinds of weird stuff with the computer. That so that really got me into it. Was, hey, I love this computer. I love technology. What field or what jobs are available in this field?
Computer science is full of it.
Yeah.
And then I think I remember asking you one time how you learned it. Didn't you say you picked up a old textbook and you just started reading the language?
So we'll step back one question before that one. So you said, how did I even get into it?
Yeah.
So I obviously went to school. I went to Rick's College.
Okay.
But I didn't have a plan. I went on my mission with no plan of how I was going to college before. And I wasn't really too worried about it because my dad didn't finish college.
Mm-hmm.
My mom never went to college. And so I wasn't sure I'd ever even go to college. I wasn't sure what my plans were.
And you were the firstborn. So
I was the firstborn. So I had to lead the way. On my mission president gave me a scholarship to go to Rick's College. So it's usually somewhat difficult to get to Rick's College. I got a 17 on my ACT score, which is pretty low for all those out there that don't know that.
It's pretty low. Out of 36.
Yeah. So 36 is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if he got 36, but
yeah, that's pretty high.
Yeah. So, but the 17 was fairly low. And I never applied or anything to college, but because my mission president gave me this scholarship that he was only allowed to give one out his whole mission, that automatically guaranteed me entry to Rick's College, and it gave me it was a simple $500 scholarship. It wasn't a ton, but the biggest thing
back
was
then though, $500 was pretty good. I mean, now it's like $40,000 just for tuition.
Yeah, back then it was $900 a semester.
That is cheap
for the 23 credits. So I got into Rick's College without having to take the AC I didn't even turn in my ACT score. I had to take it again. My first day of college, I had to go take the ACT, which I drove all night to get there in time to take it, which is a whole other story. But I didn't sleep at all, but I got a 17 again. So it was funny because in our statistics class, our statistics teacher would always do all these correlations. And he said, there's always some outliers, but this is the first time I've ever seen this in teaching statistics, that someone has a 4.0 GPA and has a 17 on their ACT score. He said, that's never happened in my entire life of teaching. I've never seen a score that low with a 4.0. So would you mind, who is that? Would you mind raising your hand and tell us how that happened? Anyway, so that was me.
That's funny.
But it's just a lot of hard work, a lot of effort and stuff like that. But so once I got into college, I'm like, okay, I want to get into computers. I'm going to take computer science. And then it just rolled from there. And then your next question is, I didn't learn it at college by picking up a textbook. My first job, I'd never done Delphi before.
Okay.
And there was no online resources.
So you just had to you just had to learn a different language.
Yeah, I learned a language called Delphi.
Okay.
And all I had for a reference was a textbook. There was a little bit of online help, but not very much.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
All right, so now getting into the main question. So obviously we know that you are a team leader. So describe and talk about the process you took in climbing the ladder, like the corporate ladder, and the things you've experienced while doing that, and things you learned that were helpful, because obviously this is a ever-increasing corporate America world, and computer science is exploding. Obviously, Salt Lake Valley is exploding. Computer science is all over the place. So kind of how can myself, because I want to get into computer science as of now. Obviously, I think it's like 80% of college students change a major. But nonetheless, how can students who are pursuing the same course that you are, who have the same passions as you, get in and do well and climb the ladder?
So for me, I don't know if I recommend this. It was really hard. But while I was going to school, I got married and needed to support my family. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time. And I got a job as a software engineer at a small company where I was the only engineer. And that's why there was like no one to teach me how to do it. I just had the book, the Delphi book that I had. But that's how I put myself through school. I was making $30,000 a year as a software engineer. And yeah, so that's how I started. I started as the vice president of technology because I was the only one there. I actually had that on my resume for a while, but I took that off realizing that was kind of dumb.
Yeah. And plus now you have much better things. But what I'm kind of getting at that is like,
how did I grow that?
Well, but like it like the very first step is just taking a job, like getting that experience, because like you said, you didn't learn you didn't learn that language in college. Like it's like you learned how to learn languages in college, and then so like you just gotta go take a job.
Yeah, and I was still in college.
Yeah, and you were still in.
So yeah, I became a software engineer, which actually made some of my classes really easy because I was doing way more advanced programming than any of my classes taught because I was doing it every day for a living. So some of my classes were super easy and I could breeze right through them. All my programming classes were super easy because I did it for a living full time.
Yeah.
So that helped me get through school quickly. Once I finished school, I took a different job up in Kaysville at a company called Mountain View Software. My main interest in doing that was they were doing a more modern language. Delphi was a dying language.
Sounds like, because I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, nobody's heard of it. It was all built for running on PCs way back in the day. So the modern language was Java. So it was brand new back then. We were on Java 1.2. We're now on Java 9. Or no, Java 11 just came out.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
Yeah, so that was obviously 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago.
Oh, boy.
So at that time, Java was still relatively new, and I had an opportunity to learn Java at this other company. They were transitioning from a Delphi shop to a Java shop. And so I was just an engineer there and did that for quite a while. Just was a regular old software engineer, just getting my tasks done and hammering through some code. I did that for 7 years at Mountain View Software, and then I went to Experticity, where I was a software engineer there for another 3 years, and then I transferred from at that point to being a manager for the first time.
All right, so you talk about that you were kind of like that basic bumblebee worker, just a basic software engineer for 7 years. So what are some things that you were able to use to your advantage, like time management, or how you were able to work with your peers, like struggles you've had, things you've learned? Because you talk about you learned on your mission valuable lessons. So what are the valuable lessons you learned as your software engineer that helped you to then take on a management position that you did a little bit later on?
Yeah, so communication's key no matter what position you hold in any company.
Okay.
So making sure that you understand what you're supposed to be working on, what the expectations are, and making sure that learning for myself. One of the biggest mistakes I made was not being vocal enough. Like I felt all this pressure all the time to get work done. And so I would allow myself to get to a state where I would think, oh, I should ask somebody how to do this because I don't know. And then I'd think, oh, let me try it on my own. Mm-hmm. And I would try. And the next thing I know, it had been like a day or 2 days. And in my mind, I thought, man, this should have only taken me a couple of hours. And here I am on day number 2, and I'm still working on the same thing. And so instead of thinking, well, I really should go ask for help now, almost the opposite thing happened where I think, well, now I can't ask for help. I'm 2 days in and I should be getting this work done. And so I would start to get more and more pressure, and I'd call my wife and be like, hey, I'm not coming home tonight. I have to stay until I get this figured out. And that happened multiple times to me where I would be like, I just have to figure this out on my own. I'm not going to ask anybody. And so I would beat my head against the wall forever until the point where I actually figured it out. And in hindsight, and I tell all my engineers this as I mentor them, I say, if you're stuck, ask for help.
Like, do it. It's better for everything.
It's better for everybody. We want you to get through this project sooner. We want you to move on to your next thing. Nobody's going to think you're stupid. We want you to understand that we all go through that, and let us help you. The biggest thing is you need to still be able to learn on your own. So I don't want you coming to me the second you run into a barrier and say, hey, I can't do this. I want you to try it for an hour. Go beat your head against the wall for an hour. But don't do it for a day or 2 days
and then,
or a week sometimes like I did. And I'd be like, just coming to my next stand-up going, I'm still working on this thing, but I'm almost there. And I did this all the time where I'd be like, I'm almost done. In reality, I wasn't even close to done. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to be almost done. I'm going to stay all night tonight until I figure it out. And I'll be almost done tomorrow because I'm going to work on it nonstop. So that was a huge mistake, and it cost me tons of personal time and everything else too, because I was just working like crazy to try to figure this thing out, when in reality I should have just asked for help.
I really like that, because especially in a field like that, where I feel like a lot of people may allow pride and like they're smart, it's like, oh, I know how to do this, I know how to do this. Like, I feel like that might kind of get into that type of workflow.
I was just always afraid of what other people would think of me. I thought they would think I was stupid if I asked for help.
Like, you don't want to dang it, like, Mike's an idiot. Like, you kind of have like not like pride, but you don't want to like humiliate yourself.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so that was a big mistake, and it took me a long time to learn that. Other key things, though, that I did learn I did well was, again, hard work, being able to push through things, being able to use the resources that were available to me. So as online resources became more readily available, learning how to search and find things quickly online to help me solve a problem. Going to other coworkers quickly and finding solutions to problems really helped me to have more breadth. And I found out as I worked with these other engineers, I saw them do things that were really beneficial. For example, keystrokes, learning how all the keystrokes on my IDE, which is your integrated development environment. So your IDE has lots of shortcuts that you can use in your keystrokes. And every time you can do a keystroke rather than move your mouse, you're faster.
Oh, I remember you talking to me about that. Like, don't use your mouse. Like, just use all the shortcuts you have on your keyboard.
So just learning all different types of shortcuts was super helpful. Learning to see how other people approach problems is like, oh, wow, that's a really good approach. I never thought about doing that way. Is super helpful as well. So the more you can spend time with other engineers and watch them code, especially people that have done it before, can be super helpful.
Yep. I think it's really cool, though, because that's kind of what this whole podcast is about. It's like trying to get into the head of someone else and figuring out how they would solve a problem or how they experience the things that they experience and how you can cope with that. So that's pretty cool to hear about that. And then now on to when you first started getting your leadership roles, because we kind of backtracked and just talked about just the day in life and kind of working around with the basics as software engineer. So how about talk about your first management job, and how did that work out for you, and what were your responsibilities compared to now?
Yeah. So let me take one step back before that and tell you how I made the jump.
Okay.
From being a team lead and a senior software engineer to a manager. So it actually has a really interesting story. I started off feeling kind of like a victim. I felt like I was being overlooked by some of my peers and my leaders because of the work I was doing. I just didn't feel like I was getting credit for my ability to be a leader. And so I kind of went into this victim mode for a little bit, where I felt upset that I wasn't being picked.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of introspection at the time, and I had a friend that he and I were both bouncing ideas off each other and really trying to help each other improve. And one day I was telling him about a great deal I found on KSL, which is a local Craigslist place.
Yeah.
And so I found this great deal, and I got the deal, and I was telling him how much money I saved, and he said, "Let me ask you a question. How much time did it take you to get that deal?" And I said, I don't know, maybe 10 hours. And he's like,
that's crazy.
How much time did you spend at work to get that deal? And I was like, like 9 hours. And he said to me, what would happen if instead of wasting 9 hours of work, you were to actually do work? Like, what if you went to work and you never wasted any time and all you did was work? How much more money would you be paid right now? And I said, nothing. Like, there's no way anybody's going to pay me any more money.
Because then it just is like a salary job.
Yeah, it's salary. But in my opinion, I just didn't feel like anybody would notice. I felt like no matter how hard I worked, I wasn't going to be appreciated. So victim mentality, which victim mentality is horrible.
It's terrible.
So I said, I don't think I'd get paid at all. I said, I'll make you a bet. He said, try it for 6 months and let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, all right, let's do it. I'll try it. I bet you that nothing happens. I'll bust my butt for 6 months. I won't check my phone. I won't check messages. I won't check personal email. I won't look at websites. I won't check ESPN. I won't do anything for 6 months. All I'll do is bust my butt and work from the second I get to work to the second I leave. And let's see if anything happens. Mm-hmm. So at the time I was a senior software engineer. 2 months later, they made me a lead. Mm-hmm. After doing this for just 2 months.
Just 2 months.
Yeah,
all right.
with a raise. I made an additional $20,000 with that first raise.
Which is good. That's really good.
And then 4 months later, before the end of the 6 months, I got a promotion to be a manager, and they bumped my salary up another $24,000.
Which is also good.
Within 6 months.
Within the whole 6 months.
So $45,000 roughly within 6 months of doing what my friend suggested I do, of just putting my nose to the grindstone and working the whole time I was at work, which, it's okay to take a break. Like, and I would take like 10-minute breaks, and I would call my wife or check my messages.
Normal stuff. But not not to where it's like we were talking about, like barriers. Like, it's not becoming a barrier, distracting you, or like taking you out of a place of like deep mental like zonage. Right.
And the biggest thing was too, during that time I wasn't focused on like getting a promotion. I wasn't trying to climb the ladder. I was just trying to work. I was trying to work hard.
And you had the bet, so you're like, I'm gonna try to prove my buddy wrong.
Right. So I wasn't trying to. I wasn't going out there and being like, look how hard I'm working. But it just happened because I was working so hard. I was getting so much done and making such an impact at the company that I was being recognized, and my peers were recognizing me. And all of a sudden, I had some peers at the time. I didn't know it, but I had some peers that were like, Mike's an okay developer, but he's not great. Mm. And I had some of these peers coming to me going, man, you're killing it. You're doing awesome. Like, this is great to see all this great work you're doing. I'd be like, really? Like, it doesn't feel that different. Yeah. It just feels like I'm just doing my job. So that was a really an aha moment for me. And so then that got me to the point where I'm now a manager, but I still had some weaknesses in that jump to a manager. I've never been a manager before. And I read a book called Crucial Conversations. And in that book, it really helps you understand the science of a conversation. It helps you understand, like, when people come to you and ask you a question, no matter if they're yelling at you or if they're super stressed or if they're anxious or if they're nervous, however they come to you, if they're talking to you, they have a purpose and they want something out of that. And as I learned about this process, I learned how to. One of my weaknesses was whenever someone would come to me and say, "Hey, Mike, this is broken in the code. What happened?" Yeah. My first reaction was always defense, like put up a wall. It's not my fault. It was working yesterday. Here, check out my code. It looks good. I have all these test cases that they're all working. Defense. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. The book helped me realize that was a really bad approach. Don't put up these walls. And rather than that, you need to look at other people and realize, what do they want? What are they asking me? They're asking me for help. How can I help them? And so I remember clearly, right after I read that chapter, someone came to me and they're like, hey, Mike, this is broken. And I thought to myself, okay, crucial conversation says step out of the conversation. Don't feel emotional. Think about what they're really asking.
Like evaluate
it, and then answer their question. Like step back in the conversation when you know what you want to say, and then answer the question. And I realized, okay, he's not attacking me. He needs my help. And I said, oh, have you checked this and this and this? Because sometimes those things fail. And he said, oh, perfect. That was awesome. Thank you. And off he went. I was like,
and it went great.
Like, that was so much better than my normal approach of build a brick wall. And so and then there was other things too. Like I had an engineer who I was working with. His name was Ben. And everybody used to always come to me like, Ben sucks. We hate Ben. And the book always talks about understand what you really want. Like, what's your purpose? And I really liked Ben. Ben did a great job for me. He just happened to be a really bad tester, and he didn't comment code. And he was a little rough around didn't have great people skills.
Yeah, his social development was kind of rough.
Yeah. But he did a great job. Like, I really needed him on my team. So when people come to me like, Ben sucks, and I would say, yeah, I'd nod my head or say, yeah. And I realized I didn't want to send that message to people. I didn't want people to think that he wasn't a good employee. And so next time someone came to me and was like, hey, Ben isn't testing his code and he doesn't comment, I said, yeah, but this is what Ben does great. Have you noticed that? And they'd say, yeah, I've seen that. I said, well, you should tell him. And so pretty soon people they would go tell Ben, hey, thanks for writing this white paper, or thanks for doing this architecture. It's working really well. And it started getting back to him that, all this positive feedback. And it eventually got back to him that, hey, Mike is sticking up for you. He's telling people that he thinks you're a really good employee. He's glad you're on his team. So in one of my one-on-ones, and I had several before that, where I'm like, Ben, how do we get you to start testing your code? How do we get you to start commenting your code? And he'd be like, screw you. I'm not doing that, type thing. And so we sit down for our one-on-one, and he looks at me before we even start, and he says, okay, how do I become a better tester? Tell me what I need to do. And I was like, really? You're ready?
There you go. That's awesome.
And so that book totally changed my career and helped me really understand the art of a conversation, which is like the most important thing about being a manager of any person, whether it's in tech or any other field.
And I think that's so we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, because so I don't know why I didn't put on this one, but I usually will ask like what their favorite book is. So obviously this is going to be one of the quick questions kind of there. That's the book. We obviously just heard a great testimony of what the book has to offer.
Yeah. And read Crucial Conversations.
Yeah, and it kind of killed two birds with one stone, because that is what you used for your manager development, and kind of how you were able to change your perspective from the software developer to the software developer manager, which is awesome. And then how'd you continue climbing from just a manager to now you're like a director?
So I was at Experticity, and I had the very best team in the entire company. We were the only team hitting all of our benchmarks. We were performing better than any other team. And I had all the best engineers. I was on top of the game. But I also knew that I needed to stretch myself. I couldn't just become complacent.
Yeah, because like you can't be the smartest person in the room, or at least you shouldn't be.
And I never try to feel like I'm the smartest person in the room.
I'm not trying to say like literally smart, but like if you're the best in the company, it's kind of like, where do I go now?
And I always attributed all my success to the great people around me.
Yeah, of course.
So they made it so that I was able to be successful. But I really wasn't a great spot. Like most people would like die to have that great of a team and everything else. So when I decided to leave to go to inside sales, I just happened to get an email. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, sure, I'll look at this email. Oh, they want me to come interview. It's literally like around the block from where I currently work, half a block away. I could go there at lunch and just like do a quick interview. I'll go talk to them and see what they have to offer.
Yeah.
And it was just for another management position. So I went and talked to this company. It was Inside Sales, where I'm at now. And I interviewed with the CTO of the company, and his name was Steve Brain. And Steve said to me, Actually, he was VP at the time. He wasn't the CTO. But he said to me, I want you to come run the very worst team in the company. And I looked at him and I was like, okay. And I was thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like a very good thing to do.
Just kind of throw it right out of you.
To leave where I'm at now to go to the very worst team in the company. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I can't get any worse. Like, this is the perfect opportunity to go to a new company where no one knows me, that I haven't proven myself. I can step in as a manager. It's the worst team in the company, and I can affect change and help them be better almost immediately.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I went there, and the team was actually a really smart group of guys. They were doing great things. They had a bad rep, and they were trying to dig themselves out of a bad reputation. And that actually made things worse, because instead of working on the things the company wanted them to work on, they were working on the things that they thought would help show off how great they were as engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So all I had to do was say, guys, stop working on whatever you want and just work on what the company needs you to work on, and forget about anything else. And I'll make sure I shine a spotlight on you. We'll make sure that you're transparent about everything we're doing. We'll make sure that other people give you recognition of all your great efforts.
The work that they're doing. And
make sure that they can be recognized for their great work. And I did that. And they started seeing, oh, Mike's not just here to aggrandize himself and make himself look good. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Every time he opens his mouth, he's telling everybody how great we are. And so the team quickly went from the worst team in the company to one of the best teams in the company. And we had some initiatives that we rolled out that other teams weren't doing, that they started following suit and doing the things that we were doing, especially with CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous deployment, which is a really popular thing now. And at the time, it was somewhat new. Anyways, that was one of our initiatives. We did some projects that really saved the company a lot of money and that people really loved, that got a lot of attention as well. So that combination of those two things in 6 months, shone the spotlight on the team, but also put me in a position where when an opportunity came to be the director of software engineering over predictive pipeline, which is what I'm over now, they chose me to take and run that team. They said, great job, you fixed the worst team in the company. Now we have a new worst team in the company for you. We want you to go and fix this product.
Yeah.
And so they asked me to first be the manager of that team. And shortly after, I was the manager for about 3 months, they asked me to take over and be the director of the entire product for predictive pipeline, which is a product that Inside Sales sells.
And then now it's where you're at right now.
Yep.
So that was a very, I mean, I guess you are kind of old now. Like, you just turned 43. So I guess we got to put that in retrospect, that you have been doing this for a long time, that you've had a lot of you've had a very lengthy story, but I think it's all such good information because that's realistically, I mean, we're all going to be 40, well, most of us are going to be 43 at some point. Like, we're all going to be given opportunities to, have the worst team, to grow ourselves, to grow our teammates, to try to continue to climb and climb and climb. And so that was really awesome to hear that. I do appreciate the, not only the depth, but the content. It was good. So then, as, obviously you've been such a lengthy team leader, what are some things specifically that you found in leading the team that, I mean, you talked about one-on-ones, giving them the spotlight, and kind of how that changes their attitude, but maybe go more in depth on things that you've done that really do, because you kind of like gave it an overview, but talk about like how and why maybe you do the things you do to build up and to develop your team. So
looking for a win-win situation is always critical as well.
Unless you're Michael Scott, then you have a win-win-win.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, I had an intern that was part of this worst team in the company that I took over when I first joined the company, and I told them my philosophies, and I said, hey, I really believe in win-win situations. After the meeting, he was a Czechoslovakian, and he said, I don't think there's any such thing as win-win situation. And I said, okay, that's fine. But, I do. And anyways, he was constantly challenging me. And one day I got a phone call from one of the other teams, and they were asking me to do something, and he could overhear the phone call. And so he said, hey, because I said, I'm going to go to the conference room so I can talk to you. And he's like, hey, can I join this conversation? And I'm like, sure, yeah, you can come join. And so he just sat there and he listened. And the other team wanted us to implement a new endpoint in our software. I said, hey, there's no reason for a new endpoint. We already have an endpoint. It does all the things you need me to do. Let me walk you through and train you on how this endpoint can really help you accomplish what you're already asking for.
Yeah.
And I said, you're going to have to sacrifice one of your requests, but you get a whole bunch right away and you don't have to wait for it. So there's a perfect example of a win-win situation.
Mm-hmm.
I gave a little, he gave a little, and
you're able to make a nice.
We both got something we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hang up, and this guy's name was Michael. He says, boom! There you go. No such thing as a win-win situation. He's the loser. You're the winner. You're going to go home and tell your wife about how you made him cry like a little baby. And he's going on, and he's like, I'm like, what? Were we in the same conversation? And he's like, he asked you for something, and you showed him you were the man, and he said he wanted it, and you told him no. I'm like, I don't think you were in the same conversation we were in. Anyway, so it was funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So your question was, though, what other things do I do as a team leader?
Or like maybe go like in depth too. Like you talk about giving them the spotlight. So like you just talked about the fact that you did it, like why? And like what are things maybe you've learned about giving them the spotlight that like actually works? And like kind of like, I don't know, like kind of in depth on that.
It's really about building relationships. So,
what you have talked about, like making sure that they know that you're their boss, but you are a mentor, you're a helper. You're not just someone who dictates them and tells them what to do all the time, and you're rude.
It's servant leadership. So servant leadership means you're really doing everything you can to help someone else succeed. And so when I am trying to build this relationship with other people, when I'm giving someone the spotlight or giving them credit, it's what's due. I mean, if they're doing all the hard work on it and I go up in front of them and say, my team just implemented this brand new service and look how great it is and look how great I am. Well, that's kind of BS. I mean,
it's just bullcrap.
Yeah. Why should I get credit for all their work? I mean, sure, I orchestrated some things, but they did all the work. So it's just about giving them credit. But then behind the scenes, it's about having those conversations of
the one-on-ones
and the one-on-ones and
the stand-up meetings and stuff.
Yeah, it's all along the way of helping them understand why it's important, what we're trying to accomplish as far as business needs, what the company expects and what with that expectation, what they can expect in return, as a result. So, it's not always about money and promotions, but it can be a simple expectation like, hey, if we get this done, the company's going to be really grateful. But not only that, but we can also move on to these other projects. And I know you really wanted to do X, Y, Z. This could be really fun for us. This product's kind of a bore, not very exciting. Yeah. But if we get this done, we can move on to these things, and just helping set that clear path and expectation of what's expected, what can be delivered, giving them a clear roadmap, having well-defined. So one thing that really helps as a manager and a director is having a clearly defined path of work. We call it a roadmap. Mm-hmm. That's well-defined, well in advance. So making sure you're doing your grooming meetings, making sure all your work's planned out so that people know what to expect. Okay, this week I'm going to be working on this, but I can see we already have planned out, 6 weeks in advance. We're going to do these things as well. And, people can start giving me feedback with that as well. Like, oh man, this work is horrible. I can't imagine doing another 6 weeks of this work. Do we really have to do this? And I can look at it and go, wait a second, why does everybody hate this work? What's wrong with it? And I can ask some of these probing questions. And I got great response from people when I'd say, help me understand, like, you're concerned about this. Tell me what you're concerned about. Help me understand why you don't want to do these things. And they would say things like, oh, well, I just think the company would be so much better off if we did X, Y, Z. And I could take that information and then digest it and other information from the teams. And then I could take it back to my leaders and say, guys, have we thought about doing this? Yeah. And a lot of times people will be like, no, that is a great idea. And I'll be like, oh, that's Renjit's idea. Or Renjit was one of my employees. Or that's Chris Parkin's idea. Or that's Doug Ireland's idea. And let them know, like, I didn't come up with these things, but these guys came up with it. But honestly, nobody cares. I mean, they love that it's Doug's idea, but they really love that I'm being willing to push back on the company. Yeah. I'm willing to bring that information to light so that people can then affect change. They like that communication forward. And they don't care if it's me or someone else that came up with the idea. They just want to know, oh, someone's going to help us make the company better. Great. Let's make it better.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of retouch on like the grooming stuff. So when I went to go get my credit card for my first credit card, because obviously just turned 18, I talked to my lady, and she happened to be the manager there, and they talked about what she talked about during their. I don't even know how this conversation even started, but she talked about when she was leading her meetings and that kind of getting out all the blockers, that they would do their meetings and they would sit down, have whiteboards, and they'd write out the list of distractions, the list of things they have to do. And it kind of helped put everything pen and paper and all their peers exposed to everyone's things they have to do. So when you're talking about those grooming meetings or those stand-up meetings, are those the type of things that you guys are discussing as you're discussing individual plans? You're kind of putting everything out on the table for everyone to hear and for everyone to understand, and that way you can kind of cut out all the crap. Because let's say someone does have on their priority list for the day, text my friend, everyone's going to be able to hear that and be like, maybe you shouldn't do that. And obviously that's a really stupid example, but kind of like that. So is that kind of what you're talking about, though, in those meetings?
Yeah, so the grooming process is really about getting everybody on the same page and pushing people to make sure that they contribute and get their input into the process so that we are sure that when we estimate something that it's accurate and that we can get it done in the time we think we can get it done. And
cutting out all the crap.
Yeah.
So now kind of to the end of the episode. Obviously, I asked these questions to everyone, so, this will be all familiar. Who/what inspires you the most, and why?
Well, the easy answer, of course, is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
But he's a little hard to relate to.
Sometimes.
Yeah, obviously, he knows me a lot better than I know him.
Yeah.
But he definitely inspires me. Joseph Smith, I love the way he dealt with persecution. Anytime I feel like I'm being persecuted or life is hard, I like to think about how hard his life was.
And the crap he had to go through.
Yeah, and
his
just
entire
how
life.
amazingly well he dealt with all that. And then my grandpa Hagberg really inspires me. He was a super hard worker, loving, kind. He was super charitable. He was always going out of his way to help other people. He had several people living on his property at times that never paid him rent or doing anything.
Yeah, shout out the goodness of his heart.
Yeah, he's always trying to help other people. So he's somebody that I always wanted to be like and trying to help other people and serve and be kind like he was.
Okay, and what's one short-term thing that you would suggest people to listen or do / listen to before they go to bed tonight, or just kind of a one-day kind of excursion thing?
So I'd say, going back to crucial conversations, if you have something on your mind that is bothering you about a conversation or something you want to get done, I would ask yourself, what do I really, really want? So for example, when I had to think about Ben and people telling me he was a horrible employee, what did I really want? I wanted Ben on my team. That's what I really wanted. But the easier thing to do was just to go along with everyone else. So, but there's lots of situations like that where you can put yourself in the situation of okay, I'm really mad at this person and I want to talk to them. Well, what do you want out of that conversation? What's the end result you're looking for? If everything went perfectly, what would you want to have happen? When you start asking yourself that question, you start realizing, well, everything I'm thinking about, talking to them about, is just to prove that I was right and they were wrong, or it's just to make them feel bad. And so if you can really get down to the point of, what do I really want out of this conversation? If it's someone you love, maybe you just want to let them know that you feel like you want to be valued, or you want to be loved by them as much as you love them, or whatever the case may be. And maybe the easiest thing sometimes to do is just drop the whole point, because sometimes it's not worth it. But what do you really want
out of a
conversation?
Think about
that short term? Yeah.
And then what about long term? So more of like a longer kind of, maybe a mindset, maybe a change. Like, for example, you did the 6 months of just grindstone.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one that to talk about anyways. I mean, if people wanted to just quantify, like, hey, am I being effective at work? Am I really giving it my all? And what would happen if I did? Would anybody notice? I think that's a great goal for anybody. It really changed my career and
it's led you to the career you have now, and the attitudes you have now, and just all the experience. So I would definitely say it's a good one to have as well.
Yeah. So try that. See what would happen if you just remove the distractions from your 9-hour workday. So you have a 1 hour lunch, you have your 15-minute, 10-minute breaks, whatever you want to take in the middle of the day. Use those 15-minute breaks wisely. They go by really fast. You'll find out. So you can still check your ESPN. You can still check your messages.
Yeah.
But you just got 15 minutes to do it.
Yep.
You can do whatever you want.
And then everything else is just work.
Yep.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show, and give your goodbyes, and then that will be it.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Goodbye, everybody.
Yep. All right. Bye.